say test, test. Just count to 20.
Hi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You have what you need, Ryan? Everybody, and thank you so much for coming. Know how busy your lives are, and we really appreciate the time you give to city business. My name is Katrin Owen. I'm the Deputy City Manager for Communications and Engagement here at the city, and I'm pleased to be the moderator today of this media availability, which is also going out live via Facebook Live to our staff and any member of the public who's interested in tuning in. Just to give everyone joining us a sense of how the conversation is going to go. In a moment, you'll hear some opening remarks from our Interim City Manager, Adam Laughlin, and then next, Kim Armstrong, who is the Deputy City Manager for Employee Engagement, for Employee Services, will walk you through the survey results that we have and some of the important work that we're doing to create a positive employee experience here at the city. And then I'll open the floor to questions. There'll obviously be questions from you, the media, and there'll be questions coming in from our staff and others via the live stream. So we'll make sure that we're democratic about taking questions from all of those sources. So to start things off, here's Interim City Manager Adam Laughlin.
Great. Thanks, Katrin, and thanks to the media joining us today, and a special welcome to our employees and Edmontonians tuning in via live stream. We know that before our employees joined the city, they had an impression of our organization. Their decision to apply was likely influenced by what they heard from our employees, their friends and neighbors, and even coverage in the media. They wanted to know who we are as an organization, what we valued, and what they could expect when they joined the city. We also know their feelings and opinions of us will continue even after they transition to another adventure. If they choose to leave us, we want to know, would they recommend the city to others? Was their work meaningful, and did it make a difference? And did they have the tools and skills they needed to be successful? Answering these questions is so important because we're committed to creating and sustaining a positive employee experience, from recruitment to transition and all the milestones in between. Through extensive consultation and research of leading practices, we have learned that most employees are looking for 6 experiences at work. They'd like meaningful work, they would like to see growth opportunities, they need a supportive environment, they need wellness, they want trust and leadership, and they want to be empowered. These 6 elements contribute to the overall employee experience. Our approach to the employee experience also helps us keep our corporate promise to enable a better life for Edmontonians. Over this past year, this promise has been the focus of many conversations and communications. To share a story, last year at an employee engagement event, one of my leadership colleagues was approached by an employee. The individual works in a specific maintenance role, and when asked what that individual's work was, he said, "My job is to keep my colleagues and our facilities safe." He could have gone into tremendous amounts of detail, but instead he went straight to talking about the why of his work and the impact that it has. That's exactly the kind of thinking we want to inspire in every one of our employees: purpose and impact. I'm now going to pass things off to Kim Armstrong to provide more detailed overview. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And hello to our employees and members of the public. It's exciting to be here today. Before I go into more detail about some of the great work we're doing across the organization, I want to share some of the results from our most recent employee check-in. in an effort to be more employee-centric, the city has changed the way we survey our employees. We're now conducting a just-in-time check-in every 3 months. These more focused surveys allow us to be more agile and responsive to our employees' feedback, and they will become a powerful tool to help inform our work on an ongoing basis. So we conducted our first check-in in December. And I think it's important to point out that the City of Edmonton is one of a small group of organizations that share this amount of information so publicly. And that's because we're accountable to the almost 1 million Edmontonians who rely on us every day and through their taxes pay our salaries. We have a responsibility to be open and transparent. I think it's also worth noting that we conducted this survey in the midst of budget deliberations, provincial funding cuts, and collective bargaining with some of our unions. We knew these factors could impact our results. However, it was important for us to give employees a voice and a chance to share their thoughts with us. We will continue to conduct these surveys on a regular basis, regardless of what might be happening around us. And I want to say a special thank you to the 6,767 employees who completed this survey and collectively submitted more than 13,000 comments that will help us to improve the employee experience at the city. Each and every one of your comments has been read. As I mentioned, this employee check-in survey was short, only 10 questions, the 9 shown here, and then 1 open-ended question for comments. These are our corporate-wide results, which, along with our branch-level results, will be available on edmonton.ca, and both have been shared with our employees. On a 100-point scale, our overall engagement score was 69. As you can see, the areas employees scored the highest include a strong sense of purpose, feeling safe and happy at work, and that they would generally recommend our organization to others as a place to work. But we also heard we could do better in helping employees feel more empowered to share their voice and speak their mind, building confidence in leadership, and recognizing the good work our people do. In all of our results, we see opportunities to do better, and this first survey is an important benchmark for us. We have done a tremendous amount of work this past year, work that will continue to advance a healthy, vibrant employee experience. This is a snapshot of some of our major initiatives and projects that are ongoing and taking place across the City of Edmonton. We know that to be successful, employees must have trust in leadership. They must observe leaders listening, communicating transparently, and inspiring them. Last fall, the city introduced its new leadership competencies. These competencies focus on self, team, and results, and are built on the foundation that as employees, we are all leaders. Employees also want an employer that supports them in developing their skills and accomplishing their own personal career goals. So growth opportunities are essential to a fulfilling career. We're currently working on a program to ensure that all employees understand their career path and, critically, are able to give and receive consistent feedback from their supervisor. We're evolving our learning framework and enhancing learning and development opportunities and programs delivered to and for our employees. And we focused a lot of effort this past year into mentoring, developing, and inspiring women leaders through presentations, workshops, idea sharing, and mentoring. And last year, we introduced new employee orientation sessions, in-person sessions led by our executive leadership team that give our new employees a chance to connect with leaders and also network with others from across the organization. We know that employees want to feel included and inspired at work. They want to feel that their voices are heard, their ideas are considered, and their feedback is actioned. In December, we introduced our new diversity and inclusion framework, the Art of Inclusion, which describes what a diverse and inclusive workplace looks like and lays out the path we'll take to get there. We know that a diverse workplace ensures that a variety of ideas, perspectives, and thoughts emerge, and that this naturally leads to creativity and innovation. Our Lightbulb initiative aims to foster innovation and continuous improvement in the workplace. This and other innovation activities are ways for our leaders to quickly and nimbly source out innovative ideas from our employees and fast-track them to implementation. Employees need to work in a supportive environment where they feel safe, respected, and encouraged to achieve wellness. This past year, we launched Respectful Workplace Training, which is both in-class and online. These courses teach skills for having important and challenging conversations about respect and inclusion. We've introduced our new Workplace Restoration Unit, which is our in-house team dedicated to rebuild relationships and trust in workplaces struggling to be more respectful and inclusive. Our Safe Disclosure Office opened in January of 2019, a place for employees to reach out and discuss work-related matters that pertain to harassment, discrimination, and respectful behavior concerns. And we've started to offer, beginning again in 2019, the Working Minds Training. This is a nationally recognized mental health education program which addresses and promotes mental health and reduces the stigma of mental health in a workplace setting. And later this year, we'll be launching a program called Connected City Initiative that responds to a particular result from our last biannual survey, which showed that some of the most challenging respectful relationship issues our employees experience relate to their interactions with the public. It's incredibly important that employees feel recognized and appreciated for the great work that they do. Last month, we launched a new corporate employee recognition and appreciation framework, which includes both formal and informal approaches to celebrating our employees. For example, our peer-nominated Cultural Commitment Awards honor employees living out our cultural commitments of safe, helpful, accountable, integrated, and excellent. And the Celebrating You program gives our employees a choice in how they want to be recognized for their work, with options like a pass to a city attraction or attending a barbecue with other employees. And the Everyday Appreciation program is designed to be an informal way for employees to thank their peers for doing great work. To measure the success of our initiatives and this work, we'll continue to survey our employees. The next employee check-in has been scheduled for March, and will also be focused on measuring the 6 outcomes that Adam spoke about of a positive employee experience. And in June, we'll do a topic-specific survey that drills down on some of the findings and trends we're seeing in these check-ins. And then in September, we'll do our more comprehensive biannual survey. All of these results will be shared publicly. Thank you for your kind attention, and I will pass it back to Adam to wrap up.
Thanks, Kim. I'm extremely proud of Kim and her team with the assistance of many across the organization and the work they've done to develop a comprehensive way to ensure the employee experience here is the best that it can be. It's the check-in results that are being released today that will guide our work and make sure we're on track. And in 2020, we'll continue to focus on ensuring our employees, as the slide shows, that we'll have meaningful work, growth opportunities, a supportive environment, wellness, a trust in leadership, and employees feel empowered. By focusing on the employee experience, we know that our city employees will be able to deliver the best possible services and continue to deliver high-quality programs and projects to all Edmontonians. And I thank our employees for contributing to this, and I thank you for your time, and we'll now turn it over to Katrin for some Q&A.
We're happy to take your questions. Who would like to kick us off? Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, there we go. I was just going to ask to get that back up. But so maybe just for Adam, I'm looking at the results here. I see some B's, some D's. I don't see any F's, but maybe just sort of break down the scores and your assessment of the results that you see.
So I think one thing that I'll say is that I think this isn't necessarily about the scores, but this is about the feedback. And Kim mentioned the 13,000 comments, and for me, that's key. That's key that we're continuing to move the needle on an engaged employee, one that wants to share feedback with us, which is fantastic. And as Kim mentioned, there's some things that we want to continue to work at. And by doing these surveys on a quarterly basis, it gives us the opportunity to respond quickly and get feedback quickly so that we can continue to evolve and take some nimbleness to this employee experience. And I'd ask Kim to provide some, I think, more specifics as it relates to key focus areas.
Sure. So one, for example, would be people want to feel that they have the opportunity to provide feedback and that feedback will be heard. And when we look at the comments, we realize that there's a bit of diagnosis that has to happen, because in different work areas and sections, the reasons why employees aren't feeling like they're able to provide feedback vary. In some places, it's because nobody's listening, or they have the sense that they're not being listened to. In other areas, it may be a feeling of that there's not psychological safety for them in their work area. In another place, it might be, yeah, you're listening, but you can't do anything about the things that bother me, so I'm not really feeling like I'm being heard in that way. So what we're doing with our supervisors, we call them people leaders across the organization, is inviting them to go and look at the specific comments in relation to their work group and identify, if you may, diagnose what's the issue in your work area. Now that's on what I'm going to say micro level, but I also want to talk macro. One of the things we're doing, we met, Adam and I and Katrin and the rest of our exec team met with over 700 of our people leaders this week, and we're meeting with another 600 before the end of the month. One of the things that we're talking to them about, and one of the skills we need to develop, is how to have a two-way conversation with someone, where they can tell you, hey, you know what, as a leader, here's what you could do better. Here's what you could do to support me more effectively. So we want to build that capacity and that skill without being defensive and without feeling shamed in having honest and transparent and authentic conversations with our employees. And so that's part of our work in 2020. One of our leadership competencies, in fact, the first one, is courageous. And so courage is not the absence of fear, it's the mastery of fear. And it's being willing to engage in difficult and challenging conversations and, frankly, hear challenging feedback, even when it's uncomfortable to do so.
Well, here's one of the challenging feedback is the confidence in the executive leadership team scored 52.
I'm going to paraphrase that question because our folks listening don't hear the question. So Jeremy just asked the question, how come the score around confidence in the executive leadership team is so low, and what are we doing about it?
And how do you feel about it? How does it?
Yeah, so let me just start with what we're doing about it, and then I'll say how I feel about it personally. So when we looked at the actual comments, what we realized is there's a whole constellation of ways that people think about leadership at the city. So for some people, just to be honest about this, they don't even know who ELT is. And for other people, they do know, and they're their comments are very focused on ELT. So we saw a whole range. When a lot of people talked about confidence in leadership, they talked about confidence in relation to their own people leader or their branch manager or their director. Here's the point with that. We need to up our leadership game across the entire city, ELT included. ELT, our branch managers, our directors, and our people leaders, the 1,300 people who are out there actually interacting with frontline staff on a daily basis. So, as I mentioned really quickly in my initial comments, we launched a leadership competency framework. We launched it to the branch managers in June, to the directors in September, and this week and this month we're launching it to all of our people leaders. And we're not just saying, hey, here's the 6 competencies we're holding you accountable to. We're also saying we're going to focus our learning, our development, our peer mentoring, and our collaborative networking on these competencies. So while I would obviously have hoped for a better result, I am an eternal optimist, and I really believe culture change takes time. We have a whole bunch going on, a multifaceted approach to creating the best employee experience possible. And one step at a time, we are going to make that happen. So I am very optimistic and positive that the work we're doing right now will continue to reverberate throughout the organization and will be infused at all levels.
Kim, I have a question from one of our staff. Because you've used the phrase people leaders. Who are they? How are they selected or appointed, this person asks?
That's an excellent question. In a traditional sense, some people would say anyone who's out of scope, in other words, not a unionized employee, would be considered a manager or a supervisor. We take a different approach at the city. Whether you're a unionized employee or not, if you are responsible for another human being, in other words, if you have another person that reports into you, you're a people leader in this organization. And you have commitment to that person, you need to have interactions with that person, you need to be invested in their growth and their development. So we take a broad view of what a people leader is at the City of Edmonton. And those are the folks that have been invited to these sessions I've been talking about in February.
Go ahead, Natasha.
What are the 10 questions? Because I just see 9 answers.
Oh, there was an open-ended question for people to give comments. That was the 10th. Anything else you'd like to say? So we've reported on 9 because the other one was the 13,000 comments.
So what, like the question for number 1, what would that have been?
It's just agree or disagree, right? It's like a
Yeah.
score of 100 kind of thing.
Correct. These are the questions.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And then okay. Or
Yeah.
Is that a percent? 77%?
Brian?
Say, I find the work meaningful.
Yeah, Brian, who is our analyst of these numbers, will give us specifics on that. Brian, is it a percentage number or a different point system?
It's a different point system, so it's on a 5-point scale. So an employee would be asked a question, and they would either, on a continuum of strongly disagree being, or strongly agree being 5 and strongly disagree being 1, they would select which of those they choose. The average of all of those scores is taken, and that's what you're seeing reflected on the screen.
Strongly disagree was 1.
That's right.
Yeah.
Score based out of
Strongly agree is that 1.
out of 100.
That's right.
So these are out of
Number
100.
3
Yeah.
phrases a question. How happy are you working at City of Edmonton? That's actually phrased as a question.
Correct.
How would you say strongly disagree or strongly agree with that?
So the sliding scale for that question may in fact have been different. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brian.
It's always a 5-point
Brian, you need to
scale.
come up because our folks listening can't hear. So hate to put you on the spot,
okay.
but you're saying interesting stuff that everyone wants to hear.
So it's a 5-point scale,
Mike.
but it doesn't. Sorry, it's a 5-point scale, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be strongly agree or disagree. It's just always a continuum for whatever makes sense with what the question is.
We can share, we are happy to share all of that with you, like the exact scales and questions. There's absolutely no problem with
We'll
that.
get that to you so you can see how the methodology worked.
The last big survey that's done every 2 years.
Yep.
In 2018 and 2016, obviously made a lot of news because there were harassment cases, and that's one reason all of this started. How come I don't see a question about that?
So we will continue to do what we call biannual surveys, and you're correct, 2016, 2018, 2020, September will be the next one. That will be a much longer survey than these, what we call employee check-ins. And the biannual survey, as in the past, will include questions on respect in the workplace, diversity data. Like it will be consistent, not the exact same questions because we have a new survey provider, but consistent in methodology with the other biannual surveys.
And this is the one coming up in September.
Correct, September 2020.
So we're waiting for that.
That will be September 2020. Well, no, I would not agree with that because we opened the Safe Disclosure Office in January 24th of 2019. We have developed and launched a respectful workplace course for our employees. We're not waiting for anything in respect of addressing, dealing with, and supporting our employees who have concerns around workplace behaviors.
And Kim, would you go into, please, some of the stats coming out of the Safe Disclosure Office that explain how many cases have come forward, how they've been dealt with, et cetera?
Absolutely.
Because that really does parallel back to the earlier survey.
So, since its opening, January 24th, 2019, the SDO has received 415 inquiries. The SDO is a first step in a process. So what the SDO officers do is they provide information, do a preliminary assessment of the concerns or questions that have been brought forward, and then there are a number of different pathways that will follow from that initial assessment. So of the 415 inquiries that have come forward, as an example, 114 were forwarded to our labor relations folks for additional work, investigation, assessment. 173 of them were inquiries that were responded to by the SDO officers without further action being required, so people seeking information. And the SDO has become a place where people will call with questions about, for example, how to take sick time or parental leave or questions about disability management. So in those instances, it's a bit of a clearinghouse, and then those folks who are calling will get sent to the appropriate part of the organization that can respond to their issue. We've recognized the importance of timely response in the SDO office, and as a result of that, we added a second Safe Disclosure Officer in the summertime-ish to support the woman who was originally in the office.
Because wouldn't those questions that you just mentioned, parental leave or that kind of thing, wouldn't that just be a basic resources question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's many ways you can get answers to questions like that. You're 100% right. You can go to your people leader. There's resources online. We've just found that some folks are calling the SDO with questions like that, and our goal is to be helpful, and so we answer their question and send them to whatever part of the city is most relevant to their inquiry.
And that is also the place that you would go if you were having difficulty. And I've got a question here from a staff member who may themselves not be having a great experience. The question is, are you going to do anything about bullying managers and hires that appear to be rigged? And it's a very pointed question. Do you mind tackling that?
No, not at all. So if someone has an experience with their supervisor that they believe constitutes bullying, I would absolutely encourage them to reach out to the Safe Disclosure Office and schedule a conversation. Our SDO folks will go and meet with you at a coffee shop or a public place. We also have an off-site location for the office so that there's a little bit more privacy involved in attending at the office. And discuss your concern and your issue with one of our officers. Bullying is a pretty significant behavior on the spectrum of workplace behaviors. I also want to say that if you're having a tricky time with someone at work, they're doing something that you experience as disrespectful, my encouragement to you is to try to find that courage to have that difficult conversation with that person. It isn't always possible, and there can be power dynamics at play. However, we need to get to a place in this culture where we can have conversations about things that irritate, annoy, upset us, or that are bothersome to us in the workplace, so that we can work through those issues together and thereby build our community up. The second part of the question about rigged hiring practices, I have no knowledge of rigged hiring practices, so it's a bit tricky for me to answer that, but I can say this. We've recently undertaken a complete review of our recruitment processes. This happened in 2019. It wasn't one of the things that I mentioned when I was talking about ongoing work. We looked at it through the lens of diversity and inclusion, and we are working very hard at identifying places in our recruitment process where we have implicit bias, whether that's in questions or even the way a job profile is worded, and at rectifying that, and that's also part of our Art of Inclusion framework that I mentioned earlier. So we are committed to being transparent, equitable, and fair in all of our hiring practices at the City of Edmonton. And if there is a particular issue or a particular concern where someone feels like that's not happened, I would love to hear about it. And you could even go to the SDO with that, and it'll eventually come through to people in my department.
Go ahead.
The scores for a minute. The low score is people being scared to speak their mind. What is the city doing about improving that and trying to get that number up?
For our listeners, I'm just going to paraphrase the question. The low score of 51 on feeling free to speak my mind without fear or negative consequences. What are we doing about that? What steps are we taking?
I would refer a little bit to my earlier comments around feedback. We view that as people feel there isn't a safe place for them to give feedback. So here's what we're doing. Number one, we're asking every supervisor and every people leader to look at the particular comments in relation to that question. And one of the things we haven't said already, so I just want to say this. In addition to the last question, which is an open-ended comment field, folks, for each one of those questions, people can give comments. So we received comments that are specific to these questions, which were very helpful in helping us understand what the particular concern is in a particular workplace. So first thing is, what's the real issue in that workplace? And then secondly, developing an action plan, which is why Glint's so fantastic, because it's really agile, an action plan that will respond to whatever that concern is. So in one area, it might be doing an innovation initiative like Lightbulb, where you just say to people, okay, we're going to do like a Dragon's Den type panel, bring your best ideas forward, we're going to have some fun. Or it might be that people feel like they're talking and no one's listening. So we need to sort of understand what the concern is in that work area and then develop a plan to deal with it. And we've tasked ourselves, our supervisors, our people leaders with that work. So following the release of the survey results, immediately, the branch managers are doing what we call action planning to look at their own results and identify 2 or 3 or 4 things they can do quickly, because we want this to be quick, not taking, not process laden, taking 6 months to do, that could get at some of the key issues in their particular work area. So we're looking for agility and we're looking for responsiveness. And we're here to help and support, we being executive leadership team, as well as the other levels of leadership at the city and the folks in my department.
I'm picking up on
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Adam,
I
and then.
was just going to add, Kim's mentioned a few times about the leadership competencies and how we're advancing that and socializing that in the organization. One of those leadership competencies is inclusive, and that's a big part of getting at the heart of feeling the opportunity and the comfort to share, to raise concerns. And so culture journey is a journey, it's not a sprint, and so you need to make sure that you spend the time and encourage folks to create an environment that is comfortable and is inclusive, so that folks do feel comfortable sharing anything and everything.
Adam, one of the questions that came in from our online folks is, where can we find a list of these leadership competencies? How do I get access to them?
So we've shared this with all of our staff, actually. It was shared last year, and it was intended to begin the conversation, but this has been shared with our branch managers, our directors, and our supervisors, and in a way where it's starting to become practical in terms of the explanation of those leadership competencies. In terms of specific locations, I think...
So talk to your supervisor who can direct you to where they are.
Absolutely.
Great.
And I think the other key to that is engage in a conversation with your supervisor about those leadership competencies. I think that's another key, because we've said this at ELT a lot, and Kim references this regularly. Clarity is kindness, and being clear is, I think, something that's very important that we need to do for our employees.
I have another important question that I think follows up on a question that Natasha was asking. It's probably one for you, Kim. The harassment complaints that were on the books, what's the status of those? Where are they at?
So if the questioner's reference is to Deloitte, is that where you, okay.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay, so there is, I'm pleased to advise, only one Deloitte investigation that is not concluded, and that is on hold because the individual involved is on a leave from the city. So I can say to you that the Deloitte files are concluded.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions? Go ahead, Natasha. Yeah.
Adam, just in general, compared to, again, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, not 4, 3 and 1 year ago, how do you feel about how things are going with the city's efforts to improve corporate culture overall?
How do you feel about the culture journey, Adam? Thanks.
So how I feel, and I think this is a reflection of the executive leadership team. I think we're taking great strides to improve the workplace culture. The employee experience and those 6 elements of the employee experience, the systems that have been set up by Kim and her team to provide a forum for folks to share their concerns, the active efforts that we're taking to empower our employees and enable our leaders to be strong leaders that support their employees. I think these are all fantastic steps. I would say that it's not a one and done. This is a continual journey, and really good tools that we have with this new process with Glint and our regular check-in surveys allows us to be a lot more nimble around responding to some of the things that are coming up. So from an ability to be as proactive as we can around culture, I think we've taken great strides, and I'm really excited about what this future holds for this organization. I think it's been phenomenal work.
Just a follow-up, because you've just recently kind of taken over from Linda Cochran. So she did kind of preside over the bulk of this work leading into the next phase. You know, how's it been kind of taking over from the city manager?
How's the transition piece from last city manager to now work?
I got to get used to this question and repeat question. So I think we owe a lot to Linda in terms of the steps that have been taken, but I think we owe a lot to the executive leadership team and Kim's team for driving this. It wasn't one person; it's all of us that are driving these efforts to improve our culture in the organization. So I don't think it's around one person. I think it's a group effort. It's a team effort, and I think under Linda's leadership and the predominance of this executive leadership team were a part of that. We drove this forward, and we moved this forward, and I'm really excited about the steps that we're taking.
So I have a natural follow-up question to that came in from Chris, which is how does the leadership team, the executive leadership team, plan to address their scores, and how do we hold ourselves accountable to improving?
And I said this earlier, it's the scores are a reflection of feedback, and so I think this is and Kim mentioned this, I think this is a reflection of the feedback that we receive from individuals, and certainly getting into that clarity component as well is understanding and interpreting the information that we received around the feedback, whether it be the executive leadership team, whether it be your immediate supervisor, your branch manager and director. I think that's an indication that all levels of leadership need to improve in terms of our engagement with our employees. The how do we hold ourselves accountable is something we do on a day-to-day basis. I've never been part of a better team around what's important for the organization, what's important for our employees, and every day we engage in conversations about how do we improve this organization for our employees to enable a better life for our Edmontonians. So how do we hold each other to account? We do it on a daily basis when it relates to advancing the culture in the organization.
Catherine, can I just make one additional comment about
To
what
the
Adam
mic.
was just talking about? So one other thing I just want to build on what Adam was saying. Our new employee orientation sessions, we really do our best to have every single member of ELT there. The supervisor sessions I just talked about, every single member of ELT is attending those sessions for the entire session, not a drive-by, not hi, bye, see you later, like they're actively participating and involved. And part of trust and leadership is knowing people. And so we are making a concerted effort collectively and individually to go out in the organization, to talk to people, to listen to people, to be present at employee activities, and to really be visible and build those bridges with our employees.
Can you stay there and answer Michelle's question, which is, how are we making sure that our people leaders actually have the skills to lead? Elaborate a bit more on those sessions that we're holding.
Sure. So just starting with branch managers, who, as I mentioned earlier, we rolled it out to that level first. That's the level right below deputy city managers. So we've started a mentoring program where every branch manager is linked up with a deputy city manager for regular mentoring. We've also started branch manager, we call them coffee connections. So groups of branch managers have been formed to do peer mentoring. At the director level, in addition to the rollout of the leadership competencies in September, we've had these sessions which have been fantastically well attended and well appreciated by staff. For example, one session was on growth mindsets and what the difference is between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and let's have a conversation about that and what that looks like in our workplace. So continued both, I don't want to use the word training because they're not really training sessions, there's no PowerPoints. It's more about let's have a conversation together and talk through some of the challenges and problems that we're facing. We really believe strongly in the notion of peer mentoring and that people need to be able to reach out to colleagues to get advice and guidance on challenging and difficult situations that they're encountering. With respect to the supervisors, we just as I said, are rolling this out this month. Over the course of the next 6 months, we're going to be holding sessions for the supervisors, also about mindsets and networking and offering them an opportunity to make connections with each other. So it's not a one and done. Love your saying there. We're actually really cognizant that we need to not just give these competencies and say go to it. Good luck. We have to continue to support the development of our leaders moving forward, whether that's through education, training, mentoring, and other kinds of sessions.
I've got a couple of questions, Kim, that are interrelated, and they're pretty challenging ones. One person says, I've heard from people who've gone the SDO, the Safe Disclosure Office route, and found it not to be confidential or safe. What would you say in response to that? What would we do if a person didn't feel that this process was working?
So there is a procedure that outlines, I'm not going to use the word appeal because it's not the right word, but where you can go with a concern or complaint about the SDO. And so my first response to that would be, here's the procedure and here's your next step in who you would go to talk about the service that you received at the SDO, because we were absolutely aware that much as we're all perfectly imperfect, so will be the SDO, and we wanted to have a next step for conversation and discussion.
And related to that question and service follow-up, the question that we're asked here is, have you surveyed the people that had their harassment complaints validated, and are they now feeling safe?
So
that's circling back.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a survey of Deloitte's, of folks who access the Deloitte system. No, so I'm not aware of a survey of folks who access the Deloitte system.
But it's a good prompt that in terms of circling back with folks who have been through that experience, we could be more alert to that and spend some time on thinking about that.
Well, what I will say, and I agree, there's always an opportunity to be more cognizant of reaching out to individuals and asking what their experience was. I can say that overall, people would report they did not have a fantastic experience with the Deloitte process. I think that's a fair comment to make. And I think more importantly, what we have done is in the workplaces where there were Deloitte complaints. We have gone in with our workplace restoration unit and done assessments of what the challenges are in those workplaces. Is there a leadership imperative there? Is there an employee-on-employee issue? Is there a training issue or a development issue? And so the Workplace Restoration Unit has now touched over 1,000 City of Edmonton employees and is in every department and sort of all over the city doing that work. And a lot of that work followed Deloitte. So where there were Deloitte issues or issues identified through the Deloitte process, the unit went in and did their work.
You've got the new office, you've got all these new processes and training for, executive leadership teams. There's a whole approach that's going into responding to employees' concerns. What's the budget for all this? How much is this all costing?
Got a lot of things in place to address employee concerns. What does it cost?
So maybe if this is not answering your question, please tell me. When my department was formed, no additional dollars were required to form the department. Here's what I mean by that. Positions were reallocated from other city departments and brought into my department. So as you know, there was an HR function at the city. We just sort of upped that function, added some additional resources to it, but there was no impact on, and I think this is the correct language, the bottom line budget. Is that the right words? The bottom line budget. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's all internal stuff. But I imagine, and I'm not sure if we've been told this before, but I imagine the Deloitte services were, fairly costly as well. Do you know how much that cost?
I think it's fair to say that there's no price that you should put on people's difficulties in addressing their difficulties, and there was a bottom line number for that.
Yes, and I'm going to get it right. So I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. 3.752, so $3,752,000 was the final amount paid to Deloitte for that process.
And it's our sincere hope that as we put these 13 initiatives in place, we can be more efficient with our dollars by heading things off at the pass and by taking a more intentional approach to our leadership culture. Are there any more questions from the floor?
That Deloitte contract was about a year and a half, right?
Okay, I can answer that too. So it initiated December 18th of 2017, and the final date was May 31st, 2019.
2 years.
So those are the dates.
Are there any more questions from the floor? Because I do.
Lastly, this is very informative for city employees. You're obviously putting this out there for them to interact with. Why put it out to the whole city? Now, there's 14,000 odd city employees. What are you hoping to achieve by sharing this publicly citywide?
I'm happy to tackle that one. Transparency, as Kim and Adam have both said, is critically important. Also, there was a tremendous amount of attention on the city, not all of which was flattering, over the last couple of years. We wanted to give voice to the good work that is going on. We wanted to give voice to those folks in our organization who love their jobs. We also wanted to give voice and be very proactive about dealing with problems. So we think we have a responsibility to be really open and transparent about these things, hence an event like this, and hence the ongoing release of these survey results as we have them. If there are no more questions, I want to honor the first person who asked a question online. It's from a custodial worker. As a custodial worker, what growth opportunities can you offer for us? Fair question.
Yeah, I love it. So the first thing I would say is to any city employee, you need to sit down and figure out what it is you want, where do you want to grow, learn, and develop, and have a conversation with your supervisor. So sit down with your supervisor, look at the catalog. We've got everything from, hey, do you want to facilitate working minds? Do you want to come and facilitate a respect in the workplace session? Are you interested in financial acumen? Like, where is it that you want to go in terms of your own personal development and growth? And then what can we do at the city in our catalog of offerings and programs and facilitation opportunities to support that growth and development? And I think another component of that, we've talked a lot about the leaders of people folks. We're also talking to our employees in this way. Every single person who works at the city is a leader of service. So we are all leaders. There's positional leadership, formal leadership. And if you impact and influence another human being in your day-to-day work, you are a leader. You are a personal leader. So we are talking about leadership as something that applies to every single person who works in this organization. When Adam was talking about inclusivity, inclusivity is important for all of our employees, not only our positional leaders. Courage is important for all of our employees. So when we talk about leadership, we're really trying to frame it around every single person who works here is a leader, and we're here to support your personal development and your leadership development as well.
And your professional development here at the City of Edmonton.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you all for coming. Melissa Lovett is your day-to-day contact on this file. If you've got follow-up questions, fire them in her direction. She'll be happy to help you as you need help. Really appreciate you spending time with us. Appreciate everyone who came online to spend time with us. And thanks again for being with us.